and that was what my life looked like. I was exhausted. The dad was in and out of the picture. As much as I wanted to make it work, I could not imagine giving birth to my little baby boy and him not having a father in his life. In the meantime, I found out he had 3 other children by 3 other girls. And yeah, so I pretty much assumed that he wasn't going to be in my baby boy's life. But for me, I was like, you know what? I know that God is a God that can make all things new, so we're going to do this thing. So I worked hard, and at about 32 weeks of my pregnancy, 2005 Christmas Eve, all of a sudden I'm feeling some contractions. I'm feeling something feels a little off. So sure enough, I go to the hospital on Christmas Eve of 2005. And when I get to the hospital, I'm like, begin to explain the symptoms. And before I know it, they're checking me and they're like, oh, wow, you're dilated at a 10. I'm like, okay, you're about to have this baby. 32 weeks, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not too far, so I'm actually pretty excited. So eventually they rushed me into an emergency C-section. So really, within that 32-week period, 8-month period, I became very excited for what God was about to do, what the gift that he was going to bring me. I felt almost there had been so many things in my life that were stripped away from me that I had no control over. However, this baby, although, I had messed up, the baby was not the sin, the baby was a gift, and God had a plan for this baby, and I felt like it was going to be almost like us against the world. No one could take this baby from me. This was going to be the thing that really filled the voids, the deep voids in my heart that were so painful that I had longed for to be filled, was this baby boy. And so, once again, I rushed to have an emergency C-section. And before I know it, they're like, okay, Taylor, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and before you know it, you're gonna be holding your baby boy. And so I'm like, okay. And I actually am gonna go ahead and have the worship team come up, just side note, because I'm gonna be closing soon. But so I go into emergency C-section, and I'll never forget, I'm laying there and I wake up. And as I'm laying there, I feel my dad is on my left and my mother is on the right. And I remember they were just stroking and rubbing my arms. And I'll never forget that I looked up and I began to look at my dad to the left and my mom to the right. And the first thing that I asked was, where is my baby boy Micah? Where's Micah? Because I wanted to hold him. Of course, any mother, that's the first thing they want to do is hold their baby. And so I'm laying there and I said, where's Micah? And then they begin to tell me that Micah did not survive the birth, that they didn't get him out in time and he lost oxygen and he passed away. And so therefore, the hit to my heart, the void, the deep, deep, deep void that continued to form in my heart, I cried out like a little baby myself. The one thing that I was so excited to have, the one thing that would bring so much healing and wholeness to my life, finally, was once again stripped away. And so therefore, I grieved for a long, long time. 2 to 3 months, I guess, it's long to some people, but I laid in the hospital for 3 days. And I held my baby boy for 18 hours. I held him. There he is right there, my little Micah boy. You can play, and I want y'all to go ahead and play. Oh, Jesus. And I see him, and there's still parts of me that longs, to have him. What would life be like if I had him in my life? What would life look like if he was here today? But even in the midst of my pain, I put these pictures up because I want you to see that it's been a journey to get to where I am today. I've had highs and I've had lows. I've experienced the valley of the shadow of death. And in that moment, I would say that was probably Taylor's valley of the shadow of death. And I didn't know how I was ever going to get out of that. I laid and I held him, and when they came to get him, I went kicking and screaming. He wasn't even alive, and yet I wanted him so bad. It was almost a symbolic thing of the one thing that I could hold on to, but yet another hit, taken away, more voids, more brokenness, more of my heart being shattered. But it was in that moment, in the brokenness, in the darkness, that Jesus became life to me. He was no longer a worship song that I sang. He was no longer this Jesus that I read about in a book, but I experienced Jesus. He came and he flooded that hospital room. And he reached down and he picked me up. And although death and Satan and hell had its grip on me, God in his sovereignty, in his almighty power, he said, no power in hell, no scheme of man can ever take Taylor from my hand. And Jesus, he met me there, and I said, God, I've known you my whole life. I've heard about you, I've read about you, but I need you to come and rescue me. I need you to come. I can't help the things that have happened to me, the divorce, the abuse, these things. But I've messed up and I've failed in some areas, but I need you to come and I need you to reveal yourself. You are a God that makes all things new. I know it full well, but I need you to do it. But the biggest thing that he taught me in that moment was, Taylor, I will do it. I'm able to do it, but you have to surrender. So you have to surrender these details of your life. You have to submit them and lay them down at Calvary so that I can come and I can do the finished work that I came to do in your life. So then what did life look like for me? Well, I got up, I grieved, but I knew there was something in me that was awakened in the hospital. As many things that died, there were many things that died, but there were also things that were awakened in my heart, and the deepest parts of me that I had longed to be awakened for years. I said, you know what? Grace covers my life, and I can choose to get up. I can choose to lay here, or I can choose to get up, and I choose to get up. So I got up, and life started to look like what it was going to look like before all the mess that happened. And I packed my bags, and I moved to Dallas, Texas, and I enrolled at CFNI, and I began to pursue the things that God had called me to do. And I love it so much because I don't want to focus on the hardships and the tragedies of my life, but I want to bring my story full circle and show you the God that we serve, that he is a redeemer. He is a savior. He is a good God. And the reality is bad things happen to good people all the time. Bad things happen. I'm looking over at Boko Haram, what they're doing to the children and the people in Africa, and my heart is overwhelmed. I look at ISIS and I see how they're destroying people and they're wiping them out, and my heart is overwhelmed. I know there's people in this room that are walking through divorce. I know there's women in this room who've been abused, and you carry the guilt and the shame and the lies of the enemy that you can't seem to be free from. I know there's women in here that deal with addiction, or you have fathers that have dealt with addiction, or mothers or sisters and brothers. But then I also know the God that met me in the hospital room, and who he is able to deliver you. He is able to engage your situation. He is the God of life and of love, and he is able in the midst of the pain of this world. He is able. And it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, but he's patient with us, and that's what he did with me. It's been a journey of learning this God. But it's been a beautiful journey, and so I tell you my life and how I want to show you how he's brought it full circle. So my family now, honestly, 20 years of divorce, it was hell for a long time. Cop cars, and every week there was a cop car in my house. I lived in the courtroom, testifying against mama, testifying against daddy, always torn. And yet now, if you come in El Dorado, Arkansas, we're having barbecues together. Stepmama, my mama, my daddy, we're all like, the more the merrier. Which that is a testimony within itself if you come from a divorced family. That's huge. And honestly, I can't imagine life without my stepmom and my little sister. So God has brought that and brought his healing power to that situation. And then from there, my mother, that's actually a work in progress, and I'm not giving up on that. For a long time, she couldn't read, she couldn't write, she couldn't work. Now she has a job. Hallelujah. Now she has a job. Hallelujah. She actually went to school and she had straight A's with a 4.0 average. Come on, somebody. Seriously, come on, somebody. That was your mama. You be praising them, huh? That was your mama. Y'all don't even know. You got a 4.0. And it's still a journey for her. We're still walking through that journey. But once again, I'm believing for full restoration. And I proclaim it every time I get on stage, off the stage. It's a daily thing. I'm believing for it coming around full circle. Full circle. And then, of course, my favorite, the love of my life, my husband, Robert, who I felt so inadequate. I never thought that I deserved a man like Robert. I remember feeling so much shame and just so much guilt. I couldn't even accept the blessing because I was so blinded to shame and guilt. I just felt so unworthy. And I'll never forget, Robert, when we were dating, we dated 6 years, which Jesus help, Lord, that's another testimony within itself. My God, that's another, I'll share that later with you. But I remember when we were dating, and I remember saying, oh God, Robert, I just know it's hard to be in this relationship because I don't feel worthy to have a man like you. And I remember him grabbing my hand and grabbing my face and saying, Taylor, do you believe in the grace of Jesus? I'm like, yeah, of course. Do you believe in the cross, the finished work of the cross of Jesus Christ? Yes, of course. And he said, then you're forgiven. Your past is old, and let's do this thing together. And so today, I want to grab your hand. I want to grab your face, and I don't know what you're holding on to, but I want to tell you the cross was enough. And when you accept shame, you're denying the cross. But you know what? You accept the cross of Jesus. You accept the life that he has for you because he does exceedingly, abundantly, above all that we ask or that we think or we can imagine. And so then we're married, and then of course my 2 beautiful babies. For a long time I shared my testimony and I was able to bring everything full circle except for that part. But now God gave me my 2 little amazing blessings that I love. And for my Micah boy, Micah, that means God's mouthpiece. And I named him that. My first name's Micah. But I named him Micah because I said, God, I promise you, I commit to you that this story, whether it's to one person or whether it's to the world, whether it's to platform, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I promise you that this will not go to waste. That I will tell the world of your goodness. And Micah's life will not be in vain. The people will be healed, and he will be restored, and he will be set free because of Micah's life and my life. And so, there's moments that I have where I would love to see Micah and have him with us. And sometimes I have hard days. But God, in his sovereignty and his uniqueness and his just how good he is, he's not a God that's just out in the universe, but he's a relatable God, and he comes down and he uses the sweetest, most simplest things sometimes just to give us a little comfort. So one day I was having a little bit of a hard day, and I had a friend contact me, and I was missing Micah and wondering how he was, and is he in heaven? Is he, is he happy? Is he, what's going on? And all of a sudden my friend sends me this message, this MySpace message that tells me how long ago that was. And she's like, hey, I had a dream and I've got to tell you about it. It was me and Micah. And she said, I don't know how I knew it was Micah, but I just knew it was Micah. And she said he was running through this beautiful field, this garden, beautiful flowers were everywhere. There were butterflies, and she said he was just laughing. He was so happy. And about this time, Micah would have been 2, so he was a little toddler running around. And she said he took my hand and he brought me into this green room where all the valuable flowers were. And she said, and then when I walked in, there were pictures of you everywhere. She said they were hanging on the walls and hanging on the ceiling. And she said, and he took me to this picture of you, this one big one that was hanging, and he said, this is my mama. And these pictures remind me that one day I'm going to get to see her again. And I think in the moment that I needed it more than anything, God gave me that sweet little comfort to let me know that Micah is okay. He's in the place that we're all longing and striving to get to. He's singing praises and glory to our Savior. God is a good God. You are not disqualified. It's not over. There is hope, there is life, and I pray that today that my life brings hope to you, to remind you that you're not walking in this thing alone. And just whenever you submit these things to Jesus,